All of you clearly visible the slides? Just write in the chat box so that we can proceed further. Okay. So today we are going to start a new subject known as Theory of Computation, and this subject is of very much importance to us in computer science and IT field, as this subject is also included in your GATE exam, and in all the competitive exams you will find many questions related to the theory of computation subject, and this subject is the basis for the next subject which you will going to study in the fifth semester, known as compiler design. So the compiler design basically deals with the theory of computation subject. This forms the basis for compiler design. So first we are going to briefly discuss the syllabus of this subject. So as you can see on your screen, this is the syllabus of the subject uh, according to RTU syllabus. So as you can see, the syllabus is divided into 5 units from unit 1 to unit 5. So we are going to study this subject from unit 1. Uh, and in all the units, you will find a automata, which is known as a machine, a specific machine, and this specific machine accepts a specific language and grammar uh, for that machine. So in the unit one, you will find a machine known as the finite automata, and this machine accept or reject a grammar or language which is known as the regular language. So here we will going to study some the automatas like the DFA. The NDFA means the deterministic finite automata, the non-deterministic finite automata. So these are the automata which are having without output, and we will going to study the machines which are having with output. So these machines are called as the Mealy machine and the Moore machine. So these are very important as far as the examination point of view. So this will have this we will have in the first part of the unit 1, and this we will also have the second part in the unit 1, because this unit is very much uh, larger according to the syllabus. So in the second part of unit 1, we are going to study the relationship between the finite automata and the regular expression and their conversion. Means how we will going to convert a finite automata to the regular expression and vice versa. So and we also study in this unit, in the second part of this unit, the two theorems. First is basically it is called a lemma. First is the pumping lemma, and the second is the Mihil-Nairod theorem, by which we can decide whether a regular expression is regular or not. So this we will going to study first, and after that, after the unit 1, which merely takes us around 1 month or so, after that we will going to study unit 2. So in the unit 2, we come across a different set of grammars known as the context free grammar. So as you can see here, in the unit 1, we will deal with the regular grammar, whereas in the unit 2, we will deal with the context free grammar, which is also known as the CFG. So here we are going to study the parsing, which is very important far as the examination is considered. And also we will going to study the two important normal forms. One is the Debye normal form, and the second is the Chomsky normal form. And we are going to study how we can solve problems related to CNF and GNF. In the unit 3, we will going to study the PDA, which is known as the push down automata. So push down automata uh, uh, is basically an automata which is used for accepting or rejecting the context free grammar. So here we will study the two forms of push down automata. One is the The normal PDA, which is known as the NPDA, means non-deterministic PDA, and the second is the deterministic PDA. So we will also going to study their differences and the closure properties and the decision properties for the CFL. So this closure and the decision property we will also study in the unit 1, like this, the decision properties related to the regular language, but in the unit 3 we are going to study the decision properties related to the CFL, means context free languages. So in the unit 4 we will going to study the Turing machines. So Turing machine is the most powerful machine which accept all the languages, which all the languages which we already studied at that time in from the unit 1, 2 and 3. So they are deal with the two important popular language. One is the recursive language and the other is the recursively enumerable languages. So we will also going to study in this unit the types of Turing machines, like the universal Turing machine, then the multi-track Turing machine and other Turing machines also. So we will going to study the properties of the recursive language and the recursively enumerable language here, and the very important, the Chomsky hierarchy, by which we can identify or differentiate between the four most popular languages with their automata or the machines which accept or reject those languages. And in the unit 5 we come across the the tractable and the untractable problems. You already studied it, some part of it in your data structure and algorithm subject, like like the polynomial problems and the non-polynomial problems, which we abbreviated with the P for the polynomial problem and the NP for the non-polynomial problems. So some problems, we will going to study. There's here some problems related to these, like the vertex tower problem, the Hamiltonian path problem, and the traveling salesman problem. So these are some specific problems related to this, which we going to study in the unit 5. So basically unit 5 is more or less not related to the theory of computation subject. It is just the extra unit which is being added in the syllabus. So more or less the first to 4 units are the core units for theory of computation. So all of you understand it. uh, can I move further? Just write in the chat box. Okay. So moving on. So these are some of the reference books uh, which you can refer. These books are available in our college library also. So uh, first book is Mishra and Chandrasekharan book. This book is published by the PHI publisher. Then the other important book is Aho, Hopcroft and Ullman. These this book is being written by the three writers, Aho, Hopcroft and Ullman. So its name is Introduction to Automata Theory, Formal Languages and Computation. This is the basic book of this subject, and one of the oldest books of theory of computation. Then the next book is of Cohen, and its title is Introduction to Computer Theory. It's been published by Edison Wellesley. And the fourth book is of Papadimou, and the name of this book is Introduction to Theory of Computation, and it has been published by Princess Hall. So if you can take the first and the second book, then it will cover all the syllabus of your RTU exam. So moving on. Just a minute, some other participants are waiting in the lobby, so I'm allowing them. So first, we are going to start with the introduction. So, as the name suggests, the automata theory, and also known as the theory of computation, is the theoretical branch of computer science and mathematics. So, as as the name suggests, the theory of computation is a branch which deals with the two branches. First is the computer science, and the second is the mathematics. So, in order to get more marks in this subject, you should be expert in computer science as well as in mathematics, because the numericals, as you can see, are much more of mathematical background. So you must be expert in mathematics as well as in computer science. So it is the study of abstract machines and the computation problems that can be solved using these machines. So in every unit you have come across a new machine, and that machine is being accepted or reject a particular language. So we will going to study it. So it also deals how efficiently that problem can be solved. So here we are dealing with how the problem can be solved and how efficiently it can be solved. So this deals with two types of theory. So first is the computational theory, and the second is the complexity theory. So in the case of computational theory, it deals with up to which extent the problem can be solved. So suppose you have been given a problem, and and you can solve that problem to 75% or 80%. So the computational theory deals with up to which extent you can solve that problem. And the second type of theory which deals with this subject is the complexity theory. So it deals with the efficiency of the solution. So it means that if suppose a problem is given to 10 students, then it can be judged by their algorithm, or how much efficiently a student can solve the problem better than the other student. Like in the case of you already studied the data structure and algorithm, and in that you already know that for an algorithm, um, we will try to find out their time complexity and space complexity. So that algorithm is better, which is having minimum time complexity and minimum space complexity. So the complexity theory deals with how efficiently the problem can be solved. So these two theories are dealt with in the theory of computation. So all of you understand it? Just write in the chat box so that we can move further. Okay. Now moving to the next slide. So automata theory is the study of abstract machines. Means there are certain machines which can be made for some specific purposes. So these abstract machines are called as automata. So we can call the automata theory with the abstract machine, or we can also call the abstract machine with the automata. So as we already studied this, the computational theory deals with the question of the extent to which a problem is solvable on a computer. So many times you have given a problem which is of like NP hard type, which cannot be solved by a computer. So the computability theory will find out how up to which extent you can solve that problem. And the complexity theory considers not only whether a problem can be solved at all on the computer, but also how efficiently it can be solved. Right? So the two major aspects are considered here are the time complexity and the space complexity. So as all of us know that whichever algorithm is having the minimum time complexity and the minimum space complexity, that algorithm will be better than the others. Now moving to the next slide. Now studying the unit 1, let us discuss some of the basic terminologies which we are going to study uh, here. So first is this, and these terminologies are very important in order to solve the numericals which are based later on in this unit. So the first is the symbol. So the symbols are an entity or individual objects which can be any letter, alphabet, or any picture. Uh, and it is the smallest unit. Like in the symbol, we can also have the letter like 1, 2, 5, and all. And we can also have the alphabet like A, B, and so on. And we can also have a picture or a symbol like here we can take the hash, or we can also take the dollar symbol or the percentage symbol. So this is the smallest unit symbol. The next is the alphabet. So alphabet are a finite set of symbols. So alphabets are made up of symbols, and here remember the word finite means the symbols are of fixed nature, means the symbols are having some fixed value. So here in the example, and it is denoted by sigma. So here in the example we have the first example, it is having two symbols like a small a and small b. So here the finite set of symbols are two. In the second example, we have the four symbols like capital A, B, C, and D. So here the number of symbols are four. So likewise, in the third example, we have 0, 1, and 2 symbols. So here there are three symbols in this alphabet set, and here in the fourth example, we have three symbols like hash, beta, and delta. So just remember these terminologies because these terminologies are very important for solving the numericals of unit 1. So the smallest one are the symbols, and alphabets are made of symbols which are having a finite length. Now moving on. Then the string. So here the sequence of zero or more symbols are called the strings of a language. So it is denoted by small w. So here remember the word sequence of zero. Here we also consider the zero here. So if for example, if sigma is equal to AB, so here various strings that can be generated from sigma are like if we are taking AB single time, then it is called as AB. If we are taking A double time, then it is called double A. Then if we are taking A three times, then it is called as AAA. Here we also have a new string which is known as the empty string, which is denoted by epsilon. And we can also have a single length string like A and B also. So here we are not taking it because they are taking it separately. So here, as you can see here, a definition we can also differ it by the string. A new definition is there: empty string. So a string with zero occurrences of symbols is known as the empty string. So it is represented by epsilon or lambda. So just remember this. Here, the empty string is also having importance, and it is being we can also represent it by epsilon or lambda. Uh, just remember this word epsilon. It is epsilon. EPSILON. It is epsilon. It is EP. It is known as epsilon or lambda, right? Then how we can find the length of the string? So the number of symbols in the string W is called the length of the string, and it is denoted by mod of W. So if you have given a string W, uh, W is equal to 0, 1, 0, then its length is 3. As 0, 1 and 0 are treated as separately, so its length is 3. So in the same way, in example 2, if V is given AB, AB, A, so then its length is 5. So all the characters are having, or all the symbols are separately treated. So all of you understand it till now? Just remember, in the case of strings, we also have the empty string, and also we can find out the length of the string separately. So all of you understand it till now? Just write in the chat box. Okay. So moving to the next slide. Now the next one is the reversal of a string. So suppose a string is given to you, like a string is given W is equal to A, B. Then if we want to reverse that string, then it can be written as W and superscript R. Superscript R. So it can be written as the last one will be the first one. The last one of W will be the first one. So if we reverse that string, if we reverse this string AAB, then it is BAA. So just remember it, how we can reverse that string. And the other important topic, these questions are basically a part of your examination, and it comes under the 2 mark question. Mm. So the next topic is the next heading is prefix of a string. So as the name suggests that we are dealing with the prefix, the first part of the string means the prefix of a string. If we are given a string W, and we have, and the string is made of two subparts like X and Y, then in the prefix of the string we are taking the X part only. So let, if W is this double A B B C D, then the prefix of W will be, just remember it very carefully here. So you are given a string W with 6, with its length 6, right? Double A double B C D, so its length is 6. Then how many prefixes can be formed of by this string? So then prefix of W is epsilon, a string with having zero string length. Then one string length is, we are taking the prefix, then we start with the first one, the A, then we move it to the other letter, means double A, then we move it to the third one, then AAB, then we move it to the fourth one, AABB, then we move it to the fifth letter, double A double B C, and finally we get the whole string, the whole W, double A double B C D. So uh, so the prefix of W will contain mm, n plus 1, n plus 1 letter if the length of the string is n. Suppose here the length of the string is 6. So here in the prefix we will have 6 plus 1, 7 prefixes are there. You can also count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, because the length of the string is 6. So that is it is also been noted in the note here. So if the length of the string is n, then the number of prefixes and suffixes of that string will be n plus 1. So just remember this. It can be it was asked in the objective examination as well. So how we can find out this, the suffix of the string? So in case of the suffix of the string, in case of xy, we are taking the y part. So you are given the same string W, double A, double B, C, D. Then the prefix, sorry, here you can make it the suffix. Here, this is not prefix, this is the suffix. So the suffix will contain first the whole word, whole W, then we can eliminate the first part of that string. So in the second one we are eliminating this A. In the third one, we are eliminating this A, and so on. After and finally we get the one, and finally we get the epsilon, which is a string of zero length. So just to remember how you can going to calculate, or how you can find out the prefix and the suffix of a string. So all of you understand it? Just write in the chat box, and also remember that whatever the length of the string is given, the prefix and the suffix will have one more length than the length of this string. So all of you understand how you can going to calculate or the prefix or the suffix of the string? Just write in the chat box so that we can move further. These are the basic terminologies, and these terminologies are going to help you for solving the the other numericals which are based on in unit 1. Okay, so moving to the next slide. Now next comes the definition of substring. So any set of conjugate symbols is called a substring. So if you are given a string W is equal to ABC, then the substring of W is, as you can see, a string of 0 length, then A, B, C, a string of 1 length, then a string of 2 lengths like AB and BC, and finally a string of 3 length, because the string is having the 3 length. So as you can see here, any set of conjugate symbols. So here a confusion is arising that you are taking the 2 length as AB then BC, then why you are not taking the AC? Because A and C are not conjugate symbols. Between them B symbol is also there. So when considering a substring, you can you need to only consider the conjugate symbols. So this is the formula for calculating the substring. So if the length of the string is n, then number of substring possible is given by the formula. So this is the formula. So it is calculated by n into n plus 1 by 2. First calculate this, and after that you can add 1 to it for calculating how many substrings are possible for a given string. So here you can we have 3, the length of 3 is there. So if we put it here, then 3 into 2 into 2. So as you can see, here is 3 into 4. You can have 3 into 4 divided by 2. So it comes to 6, and after that you can add 1. So 7 substrings are possible. So objective questions was asked in many competitive exams, how many substrings are possible if the length of the string is given. So here you can see these are the 7 substrings possible here. Now the next definition is concatenation. So let there be 2 strings. First is U, the string is AB, and the second string is V, AAB. Then concatenation means UV will be, in this case, we are taking U on the left hand side and V on the right hand side. So AB, AAB. And when we are taking VU, then we are taking V on the left hand side and U on the right hand side. So it will become AAB AB. So here a note is there. Concatenation of two strings satisfy associative property, uh, but not commutative property. That is, UV does not equal to VU. So just remember this property. In case of concatenation, the commutative property fails, but it satisfies the associative property. So moving on to the next slide. Now we Now we come across the language. We already studied the string, then we come across the language. So a language is a subset of every string made by selected alphabets. So a language which is formed over sigma can be finite or infinite. So a language can be finite or infinite. So as we can see in this example, like L1 is a language and it is set of strings of length 2. So here a set of string of length 2 means every content here is of length 2, means double A, double B, B A, double B. So that's why it is called as finite language. In case of L2, means the language, if there is given some language L2, so it is the language L2 set of all strings starts with small a. So we can find out we can make uh, any infinite languages which can be start from A. Like the first alphabet will be A, means single A, then double A, then triple A, then A B B, then A triple B, and so on. So that is how it is called as infinite language, because there can be many or infinite languages can be formed which can start with A. But L1 is of finite language nature, because the in L1 we are going to make the length of a string is 2. So just remember, the language is having two types of languages are there. One is having language, and the other is having the infinite language. So in when we are solving the questions, we come across these type of languages. So all of you understand it? Just write in the chat box so that we can move further.
Sir, one confusion is there. Hello.
Am I audible to all of you? Okay. Now Avinash is asking alphabet in definition of language is what? So basically alphabet are the combination of finite symbols. So that's why I am asking all of you to pay attention um, on the definitions. So alphabet are basically the combination of finite symbols. Are you getting it, Avinash?
Yes, sir.
Symbol is the basic unit, and alphabet are made from symbols. But the condition is that the symbols must be finite in the case of alphabets. You cannot have infinite symbols, right?
Okay, sir.
Okay. So moving to the next slide. Now there are some properties of languages, like the union of languages. So if you are given two languages like L1 and L2, and the language L1 contains uh, three components like AB, BA, and AAB, and the language L2 contains also three components, then the L1 union L2 will contain all their components, and if there is a common component, then it will be treated only once. So here you can see that L1 contains AB, BA, double AB, whereas L2 contains AB, double B, and BB. So here you can see that in the case of L1 and L2, this AB is common. So we will consider it only once. So here we consider AB only once, and rest of the the components uh, which are in both will also be considered here. The next definition is of intersection of languages. So if L1 and L2 are two languages, then in the case of intersection, we can only consider those components which are common in both. So here you can see here in case of L1 we have AB, BA, double AB, and in the case of L2 we have AB, A, double B, and BB. So only AB here in L1 and L2 is common. So L1 and L2, L1 intersection L2 will contain only the common component, which is AB. The next definition is of complement, language complement. So consider if L is the language, then L complement is denoted by L dash. So L dash, this dash is in superscript. So L dash is equal to uh, it will consider, so only 5 minutes are remaining, so we will wrap up this class in 2 minutes. So L dash will consider all the languages minus the language of minus the language L. So if for example if L is there, if you are given a language which is consist of three components like AB, and B double A, then the complement of a language will consider all the languages which can be in the language of which can be considered as AB. So all the language will be considered as A comma B, and this is the closure. So this star which is in the superscript is called as the closure, and this is very important. So we will discuss it in the next slide. So AB closure minus the language. So that's how we can find out the language complement. So just remember these properties related to the language, the union of language, the intersection of language, and the complement of a language. So moving to the next slide. So the next definition is a concatenation of language. So if L1 and L2 are given to you, then you can also complement with L1 dot L2, means always you need to to multiply in terms of mathematics, um, the first component will be taken from L1 and the second component always taken from L2. So here in the case of L1 we have three components, and in the case of L2 we have two components. So we will take in the first component AB, and we will need to multiply with BA, and now so it comes with AB and BA. Now the same component AB, we need to multiply with the second component of L2. So it comes to AB, AB. So in the same way, we need to take the second component of L1, and we need to multiply with the first and second components of L2. So we can get this, and after that, doing the same procedure with the third component of L1, and with the first and second component of L2, we will get these. So that's how we can get the concatenation of languages. Then the subtraction of languages. So if L1 and L2 is given to you, and if we are going to separate L1 minus L2, just remember that if we are going to separate L1 minus L2, then you only take the components from L1, uh, which are not in L2. So here you can see, here we have in L1 AB, BA and B double A, whereas in L2 we have double A, B and BA. So here you can see that BA and BA is common. So it will be strike out, and only the remaining elements in the L1 are AB and BAA. So this is the answer. If we are going to calculate L2 minus L1, then as BA is common to both, then only the component A double AB is there in the L2. So it L2 minus L1 will consider only double AB. Then this is very important. These are some closures. These two closures are very important. So one is the positive closure. It is written as L. L means L denoted for the language. So L superscript plus sign is there. So in case of positive closure, we can take only the language. This is the L1, L2, and L3. These 1, 2, and 3 are in the superscript form. Whereas in the clean closure means L star. We also included the L0 term here, and the rest is same as that of the positive closure. So it means that we are going to concatenate it. We are taking this language one time. We are taking it L2 means two times. We are taking it three times, and this formula is many a times comes in your competitive exams. Like L plus means positive closure is equal to clean closure minus epsilon.